So I was going to talk about a dispute I had with a lab demonstrator the other day, but there's a bigger issue with college I've had for a while that should take precedence. Before I get into my beef with university, I'll provide some background as to why I'm mad about it. So I finished high school about 5 years ago. Didn't take it all that seriously, but did well enough to get into my course. Ever since, I've been studying biomedical engineering, and all things going well, I should graduate at the end of the year. That's all good and fine, but I should mention that I didn't particularly want to do this course. I kind of panicked when I received my high school results, even though I honestly had no idea what I wanted to study after high school. Either way, I jumped into biomedical engineering as I didn't mind biology in high school, and from reading the course description, it stated there would be a rapid growth in the industry in 5 years. So I was thinking like, alright, sounds good, if there's guaranteed work in the field. Also the commute to the university was only half an hour or so I went ahead and enrolled in the course. I probably should explain, because literally every person outside of university I've spoken to asked me, what would you actually do for work as a biomedical engineer? And after I've briefly explained, they're always like, oh yeah. But to put it simply, I'd work with the manufacturing and design of medical devices tied to the human body. Devices such as cochlear implants, pacemakers, ventricular assist devices, prosthetic limbs, bionic eyes, etc. Now I'd agree that the idea of designing these things would be awesome, but the problem is I'm only a few weeks away from finishing, and I've never worked on any of these devices. The closest I've ever come to any of these devices mentioned was a research project in the first year about pacemakers, which was mostly just an online article search, and briefly on prosthetic limbs, which in reality was far from it, as all we did was use a crappy radio and electrodes to record noise-corrupted EMG signals from the wrist and forearm into the computer, which would then simulate movement on a robotic arm in the computer program, not even a real robotic arm. I can't help but feel massively unprepared for the real world after being here for so long, especially given the absurd amounts of money put into our research facilities and are for the most part inaccessible to undergraduates. It never ceases to amaze me that despite having state-of-the-art equipment, we can't get half of the hand dryers working in the bathrooms. So anyway, turns out that my course was discontinued as of a few years ago. I'm assuming due to lack of interest. Now that doesn't mean that I had to change. They allow currently enrolled people to finish. They're just not taking new students. That should have really been my first warning, the fact that the field is struggling as is, despite hearing originally that the field was rapidly growing and whatnot. But at the time, that didn't bother me, so I pushed on in the course. Then about a year later, after playing tennis, I spoke to one of my opponents who also turned out to be an engineer. He said he was in his early 40s, worked for a firm for 15 odd years, and was laid off simply because the company couldn't afford to pay him. That should have been my second warning. Employment is becoming increasingly more difficult to acquire, particularly here in Australia. And only a few months ago, an article from the Dean of Biomedical Engineering stated that biomed students need to know what they're asking for when applying for work, as many job search sites, even Seek, didn't have a field for biomed engineers. At this stage I was thinking, wow, so much for the rapidly growing industry with great job potential, where even the biggest search engine in the world still hadn't heard of it. So now after 5 years, I'll be very surprised to find work in the field. If anything, I may have to take an overqualified position as a medical device technician or something. The whole scenario really needs to be looked into. You would think that you'd go to university, graduate in something with the intention to get a job in their respective field. I get that the real world dictates whether or not you'll get a job, based on the current markets and supply and demand, but you think that after spending upwards of $40,000 studying, industry should be offering you jobs with open arms. It's a broken system, made worse by universities trying to keep you enrolled for longer, with their only interest in milking more money out of you. Case in point, more universities are requiring you to study an undergraduate science degree before undertaking your major, which is normal, but even for courses such as medicine. So you need to spend more than 8 years to complete a course, which in reality could have been streamlined into 5 or 6 years. It's a cash grab. I can only imagine it's worse in other countries. Here in Australia we have subsidised funding, meaning that the government will pay for your course, but will claim part of your salary once you start working. Although they don't take money from you unless you earn a certain amount, which is about $55,000 here. I guarantee this number will drop over the years, while the cost of living will continue to skyrocket. To finish this rant, I'm saying that I'm unsure of my future. I'm hopefully about to complete a course that doesn't particularly interest me, doesn't have the best employment options, left me with tons of debt, and feeling like I haven't really learnt anything. All I can hope for is a growth in the field, so just maybe I wouldn't have wasted the last 5 years of my life. Thanks for watching, guys.